Today on the Bandrew Says podcast, we'll be discussing social media companies banning all unverified users and a whole lot more, so go ahead and stick around. First things first, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and when I say the elephant in the room, I am of course referring to myself, because again, I think I'm funny, because I am getting fatter and fatter, and I want to address that. Is it because I'm incredibly unhealthy? Absolutely it is. Is it because I have been locked inside nigh on 10 months? Absolutely it is. Is it because I eat frozen pizzas anytime that I desire? Absolutely it is. But let me just go ahead and play it off and say it's because I'm trying to cosplay as Santa Claus, which is why I have this red and white hat on top of my head. The elephant in the room is in front of the camera, and he sucks at everything that he does, except eating frozen pizza and gaining weight. I just wanted to get that out there because I know it's at the forefront of everybody's mind. They're not distracted with anything else. They just keep watching, thinking, how does he continue to get fatter? It's impressive how he continues to gain weight. That is how. That is why. It's a cosplay. That's exactly what it is. Let's talk about something pretty important. The Prawn of Hub has removed all unverified content. If you don't know what the Prawn of Hub, the Hub of Prawn, is, it is an adult website with adult content. Remove the term prawn and replace it with something kind of similar to it. You'll know exactly what I am talking about. This last week, news stories broke that the Prawn of Hub removed all unverified content that has been uploaded to their website. And to be frank, I don't want to dive any deeper into the actual story. It is dark. This is not the place to discuss that. It is not my job, and I am not going to open up that can of worms and dive any deeper there. But the reason that I am bringing this up is the action that they took is somewhat concerning to me. Maybe not concerning, but I think it may be a look into our future. I think that the banning and removal of all unverified content would likely be the action taken by social media companies if Section 230 was revoked or reformed to a certain level, because that would provide them some form of content that is still available for the audience, but simultaneously remove any potential bad actors. And to drive this point home a little bit more, I found a TechCrunch article discussing the Prawn of Hub and the removal of all unverified content, and here is what the Prawn of Hub had to say. The Prawn of Hub noted in a statement that the new model is arguably the strictest instituted by a content platform. This means every piece of Prawn Hub content is from verified uploaders. It writes, a requirement that platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, and Twitter have yet to institute. To me, that sounds a heck of a lot like this adult website calling out all social media that accepts user-generated content, because on these social media platforms, there has been horrific stuff uploaded. There's no denying that these social media platforms are used to facilitate horrific and disgusting and quite illegal behavior and the distribution of illegal content. There is no denying that. Yet these social media platforms don't appear to have been put under the microscope the same way. They have not been forced into the corner where they are required to take such drastic measures as removing all unverified content, all content that is uploaded by unverified users. Now, I don't know if this is going to lead to the government regulating all the social media platforms, saying, look at what this adult website did, y'all need to do the same thing now, or if the government is going to say, we don't like what you've been doing, we are removing and revoking your Section 230 protections, and then that would lead to the social media platforms adopting a similar approach. I don't know what the course forward is. I don't know what the future holds. I just see this, and alarm bells are going ringy dingy 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 dingy. I just see them potentially getting summoned to whatever authoritative body would provide this information, where they learn you no longer have Section 230 protection, or we are reforming your protection to this. And then these social media platforms freaking out and saying, ban everybody that is unverified that uploads, because they would become liable for everything uploaded. I think we should take a look at this and realize that a website as prominent as the hub of Prawn doing this may be the water boiling, and we're just frogs sitting in it, waiting. And guess what? The water is boiling. It's not cooling off. It's getting hotter. And we're all sitting here. This is nice and toasty. I love this spa. And none of us are jumping out. Just a warning. That's my take on it. I could be completely wrong. Chances are I am. I will link the TechCrunch article down below in case you want to read a little bit more about it. Next, we have a Twitter story, and if I thought last week that people were mad at me, they're going to be equally as mad at me about this. Twitter is forcing the deletion of COVID-19 vaccine conspiracy theories. And here is an excerpt from their blog post, which I will link in the episode notes in case you want to read the entire thing. Under our current policy, we already require the removal of tweets that include false or misleading information about the nature of the virus, such as how it spreads within communities, the efficacy and or safety of preventative measures, treatments, or other precautions to mitigate or treat the disease, official regulations, restrictions, or exemptions pertaining to health advisories, and the prevalence or risk of infection or death. And then more importantly, moving forward and beginning next week, we are expanding the policy and may require people to remove tweets which advance harmful, false, or misleading narratives about COVID-19 vaccinations, including false claims that suggest immunizations and vaccines are used to intentionally cause harm to or control populations, including statements about vaccines that invoke a deliberate conspiracy, false claims which have been widely debunked about the adverse impacts or effects of receiving vaccinations, or false claims that COVID-19 is not real or not serious, and therefore that vaccinations are unnecessary. And as I mentioned, I am fully aware that after last week, people are on a razor's edge, ready to jump down off the diving board down my throat to rip out my heart and scream, "He's an anti-vaxxer, get him!" I really ticked off people last week, and guess what? Scream whatever you want. I don't care. None of this interests me. None of this anti-vaxxer, vaccine, COVID-19 stuff interests me in the slightest. Although a quick side note, I think you ought to know this. I have heard rumblings that vaccinations can turn you into a unicorn, in case you're at all concerned about that. And I am fully aware that this joke is gonna get me banned. For the record, I don't think that vaccinations can turn you into a unicorn. Although, I think secretly it might. Just keep on digging. That's not interesting to me. None of that is interesting to me. The entire reason I want to discuss this is one line in this blog post update. That line being, may require people to remove tweets. Why is that interesting? I don't think it's a controversial take to state Twitter has the ability to delete posts of its users. Twitter has the moderation capabilities to say, this tweet contains illegal material, this tweet contains harmful material, let's delete it. Why would they change their policy and state they may require people, assuming people means users, to delete the tweet if they want to continue to use their profile, their accounts? Why would they make that change? My theory is that this is some form of protection for Twitter, because now if Twitter is sued and taken to court over the idea of Twitter censoring people, Twitter saying, you can't have this idea, we're going to ban you, they're not doing that. Now they are stating, if you want to continue to use your profile, you, the user, have to delete that post. Twitter is no longer taking any moderation approaches in the legal sense. They are no longer deleting somebody's post. They are simply asking you, the user who posted this wrongthink, these crazy conspiracy theories, to delete the post. Therefore, if you delete the post, now they did not do any kind of censorship. They did not moderate you. They did not delete your post. They did not stamp out your idea. You, the user, deleted it. I think that is the reason why they are making this change. I could be wrong. I'm not a lawyer. It just seems to me that is the only thing that makes sense. Protection. They're pulling out, I think they're pulling the corporate equivalent of not touching, can't get mad, not touching, can't get mad. That way, when they're taken to court and the judge says, hey, why did you delete this post? They can say, not touching, can't get mad, didn't touch it, can't get mad. It really is a clever and ingenious solution to the problem of potentially being sued for censorship and deleting people's posts. Force the user to delete the post. Problem solved. It's ingenious the same way that TikTok's solution to harassment is ingenious. There was a small group of people on TikTok who were being harassed. And typically on most social media platforms, they would punish those who are harassing them. They would punish the harasser, ban them, get rid of them, make them stop harassing people. TikTok went about it in a very different way. Instead of banning and punishing the harassers, they banned the people who were being harassed. And that is a solution to the problem that I never would have thought of. I never would have considered this. How do you solve the issue of a group of people being harassed? The automatic jump to conclusion is punish the people who are harassing them. TikTok said, nah, let's ban the people who are being harassed. And that does solve the problem. It's wrong. It's the completely wrong approach, but gosh darn it if it isn't a very clever and ingenious way to solve the problem. And I think that's kind of similar to what Twitter is doing. To ensure that they are never blamed for censoring and deleting people's posts, they are just going to force you, the user, to delete your post if you ever want to use their platform again. There you go. That is the news. I will post the Twitter article and the TechCrunch article in the episode notes if you want to check any of them out. That is it for the news. Let's jump to what you had to say. As I alluded to multiple times already, last week's episode got folks real mad and they had a lot to say in the comments, and I wanted to provide them with a platform to air their grievances, to really share their ideas and let you all know what they had to say. And here is what they had to say. Kay then said, no. Bonkle said, yeah. John said, Ibital, IBTL. And Jin said, fourth. I am going to admit it, these comments were incredibly hurtful, and I thought about quitting. These are some of the toughest words I've ever heard, and I don't know how I will move forward, but I will do my best to take these words to heart, learn from them, improve upon myself, and be a better person in the future. But that's stupid. That was a stupid joke. In all seriousness, there was some really good conversations that occurred in the comments regarding last week's episode. I'm just not going to share all these comments because it will ultimately turn this podcast into a political argument where I respond to people leave comments, then I have to respond to them, and next week's... I don't want this show to become a political debate stage, so I am just going to leave them out. And we had our fun. We will always have, what's the phrase? We'll always have Paris. We'll always have Casablanca. I don't know. It's something from one of those classic movies. Thank you all for sharing your comments last week. That was a lot of fun. We have a couple more that I want to address. First comes from Tater Raider, and he says, coordinated influence operations. Sounds like an advertisement to me. YouTube needs to be more careful about how open-ended they word things. Tater Raider, thank you very much for the comment, and I agree completely. It does sound as though that could be interpreted as an advertisement, and YouTube does need to be more careful with how they word their policy, because let me tell you what, I could absolutely go and report every single advertisement on YouTube and claim that it is a coordinated influence operation and get all the advertisers banned. Although that would probably be the dumbest thing that I could do because I earn money off of advertisements on YouTube. How stupid would I have to be? Let's ban the way that I make money on YouTube. Good idea, Bandrew. I'm an idiot. Thank you very much for the comment, Tater Raider. I agree completely. And lastly, we have a comment from Dave Harvey. He says, that was one hell of a straw man, by the way. There's a lot of extrapolation from the idea of a UBI you didn't do. The cost savings could be passed on to the customer. Corporations would also need to be taxed much higher to provide for a true UBI. The idea behind calling it unnecessary labor is because we can self-checkout successfully now. Yes, if you think there would be no other change other than firing a bagger, sure, your straw man would make sense. Dave, thank you very much for the response, the comment, and most importantly, for pointing out the error in my argument. Allow me to return the favor because I always find this type of feedback so incredibly valuable. You start by stating, the cost savings could be passed on to the customer. To ensure that I am interpreting this in good faith, you are stating that the company firing a bag person who is earning $10 to $15 an hour, that savings of $10 to $15 an hour could be passed on to the consumer. Because the company no longer has to cover the cost of that labor, they're able to decrease the markup on their products. I understand that completely. But then the next sentence that you have states, corporations would also need to be taxed much higher to provide for a true UBI. Well, this is kind of awkward. I don't see this working at all. Do you not see the issue with this? Do you not see the issue with this thought process? Or am I crazy? If I'm crazy, please somebody tell me in the comments that I am completely misunderstanding and making a straw man and arguing in bad faith. Tell me in the comments how I'm misinterpreting this. The savings from firing that employee can then be passed on to the customers, but then we also need to increase the taxes or tax the companies much higher to pay for a true UBI. By increasing the taxes of that company much higher, that's likely going to erode any savings that the company acquired from firing that person who is bagging groceries. That's the issue that I see. If you're just firing the person who is bagging groceries, sure, the company could pass off that savings to the customer, but then you state we must increase taxes much higher, which is reversing the savings that that company made from firing that employee. I don't understand the thought process, but please feel free to correct me in the comments. I do appreciate this, and I'm just having fun with you, Dave. I love having this stuff. This is super fun. I know you hate my guts. You called me some really mean things in the comments. Good golly gee willikers. Let's jump to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. Welcome back to the Ask Bandrew segment. I am just digging myself into a hole, aren't I? If y'all have any questions that you want answered, feel free to head over to askbandrew.com. There are instructions on how to send in audio, video, or text-based questions. I will most likely get to those on an upcoming episode of the show. I am months behind at this point, but I will get to them eventually. First, we have a voice submission, so please take it away.
Hey, Bandrew. Greetings from Germany. I just found out about your channel some months ago, and since then I've watched at least 24 hours of your content, if not more, because I enjoy it so much. And I have a couple of questions for you. First thing, would you recommend the SM7B also live on a stage as a vocal mic? Because a lot of people say they have a great noise reduction compared to other microphones. And what's your opinion about that? My second question is about the RTX mouth declicker for ST plugin. Do you have any alternative on it? Because if I were to buy it, it would cost around €400, and just for one plugin, I think that's a bit too much. And my last question is, how are you today, Bandrew? Yeah, have a great day and keep going with the videos.
Thank you very much for the amazing voice submission, and I will start by saying 24 hours of me is too much. I can hardly stand to be around myself for that long, which is why I go to sleep so early, because I get tired of myself and I need to go to sleep to get away from me. 24 hours, my good sir, you are too kind, and good golly, take a break. You don't need that much of me. To answer the questions, though, first, do I recommend the SM7B for live on-stage vocal use because people say that it is great at background noise rejection? In my testing, I found that of the broadcast dynamic microphones, the SM7B had some of the worst performance. The SM7B has a rather wide polar pattern, so it is forgiving. If you don't have the best microphone technique, you can move a little bit off axis. It's not going to change too much in terms of tone, but that also means that it is going to pick up ambient noise a little bit better. So if you're on stage with a guitar amp or somebody screaming next to you, it's much more likely to pick that up than something like the RE320, which it does a lot better at background noise rejection. So in terms of My testing, I don't think that it does amazingly well at background noise rejection, so I don't think it would be my first choice for live stage use, but I have seen plenty of people using it for stage use, not half as much, not even 1/100th as much as the SM58 or many other Stage Dynamics, E835, any of them. But I have seen it on occasion, probably would not be my first pick. And second, RTX Mouth Declick plugin alternatives. Unfortunately, I am not aware of any Mouth Declick alternatives. It sucks that it's $400, but it really is the only option that I have seen out there that is specifically made to remove clicks of the mouth. I do know that Waves plugins has a couple of declick options out there. Those really aren't geared towards mouth declicks. Those are geared more towards the removal of pops and clicks from a record being converted onto your computer, the pops and crackles from that, or pops and crackles that are audio artifacts while you're converting something on your computer. More audio restoration as opposed to cleaning up mouth clicks. Because I don't know anything, I'm going to pass the question off to anybody listening or watching this. Do you know of any alternatives to RX Mouth Declick that is more affordable? Because $400 is a lot to pay to gain access to a plugin that removes the nastiness that comes from speaking. Let me know in the comments on YouTube or send in an email to askbandrew@gmail.com. And if I get any information, I will pass that along to you in the next upcoming episodes. Future editing Bandrew chiming in here from the future. And I completely forgot to answer the question of how am I doing today? To answer that question, I'm doing wonderfully. I am having so much fun with this show. It gets more fun every single week. And although I get quite a bit of pushback, I'm having an absolute ball. Thank you so much for asking. I'm going to pass that question off to everybody else watching and listening to this as well. How are you doing today? Let me know if you're watching on YouTube in the comments. Send me an email, askbandrew@gmail, or send me a tweet at BandrewSays on Twitter. And then maybe they'll force you to delete your post before you use your account again. But tell me, how are you doing today? Great question. Okay, back to past Bandrew. Next, we have a video submission, so go ahead and take it away.
Hi Bandrew, thanks for having me on. My name is Steven and I'm a huge fan. I really like your podcast and your podcastage stuff, and your mic reviews are always on point and really entertaining, so thanks for that. This is the Coles 4038 ribbon microphone. It was developed by the BBC back in the 50s as a television and radio broadcast mic, and later on it was used by a bunch of recording engineers as just a studio mic because they sound so good. So I use them on drums and piano, and they sound absolutely phenomenal. I love these mics. So yeah, I have a pair of these, and here is the question. So me and a friend are trying to start a podcast, and because these are the only quality mics that I own, the others being, not so great, I was wondering what you think if I use these on podcasts. Now, these are, ribbon microphones, so first of all, they're really dark, and second of all, they have a figure 8 pickup pattern, which means I have to, worry about placement and stuff. But I guess I have two main questions. First of all, do you think it's doable? And second of all, if you do think so, how do you think I should process the signal? Because these are kind of dark, right? And they don't really have a mainstream sound to them. So do you suggest that I put an EQ on the highs just to lift it up a bit? Or do you think I should, just keep it as natural as I can just to get the natural qualities of this microphone? Because I remember hearing somewhere where you said that the sound in a podcast should be easy to listen to. So what do you think of the sound on this microphone on my voice? And do you think I should use it on a podcast? Because this is a heavy microphone. I need to use pop screens and a sturdy stand. The stand has a freaking counterweight on it because this microphone is so heavy. So yeah, those are the two questions. Thank you very much for having me on. All the music I record are on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Steven Zhu. And yeah, thank you so much.
Steven, thank you so much for the voice submission, and thank you for the kind words. I truly do appreciate it. If anybody is interested in checking out Steven's channel where he does music, I will link his channel in the episode notes. Go ahead, check it out, give him a subscription, a subscribe. It is completely free. Go check it out. Now, I am all for using unconventional microphones. I was going to throw on the AEA KU5A. F that. We're going off the rails. We're using a microphone that I have not reviewed yet. We're jumping on the Royer R10. And then I am going to walk through some EQ, compression, and show you what I did there and share my thoughts on how to approach processing a microphone. Alrighty, we are now on the Royer R10. It is, of course, a different microphone than the one that you are using, so this won't be an exact comparison or an exact piece of advice, but this will give us a baseline to play off of. As far as the figure eight polar pattern, the first thing I can say is play the dead area, because figure eight microphones have some of the best rejection from 90 degrees. If you have a loud computer fan, if you have a loud sound source, a window that lets in traffic, face the microphone so 90 degrees is pointed at that sound source, or maybe even use this to place the other speaker in 90 degrees. That way, the microphone is canceling out as much of that person as possible, and you get as little bleed between the microphones as you can. Also, as you already know, you will need to use a pop filter. You do not want to pop a ribbon microphone, so you're already doing that right. And now I will just ramble for a little bit, and we will then go and look at an EQ, which you will see on the screen right now. I'm playing with this in post. Alrighty, I have Logic Pro open, I have my audio sample input into Logic Pro, and I have an EQ and a compressor added to the signal chain. Before I do anything to the audio, the first piece of advice that I want to offer is do not run away from the sound of the microphones that you're using. You are probably one of the few people who will be using Coles 4038s on your show. Embrace that. Love it, and just make minor adjustments to improve the listening experience. That's what I did with the Royer R10. I did not try to make it sound like a completely different microphone. I didn't add a 10 dB air boost and a 75 dB cut to the low mids or anything like that. It's all very subtle, minute things. Let's jump over to the screen and I'll show you what I did. First EQ filter that I added was an 82 Hz high pass filter at 12 dB per octave, and then I added a -1 dB cut at 141 Hz with a 0.88 Q. This just clears up a little bit of the lows and the low mids, makes it a little bit clearer sounding. I will play with and without both of these EQ filters on. And now I will just ramble for a little bit, and we will then go and look at an EQ, which you will see on the screen right now. I'm playing with this in post, and you are seeing what I am doing. I don't know what I am doing in post because I have not done this yet. And if you get right on top of the mic, it's not overly aggressive. It's not changing the tone of my voice. It's not changing the tone of the microphone too much. It is removing unnecessary frequencies below 80, 70, 60 hertz, depending on the microphone, and then cleaning up a little bit of mud around 140 hertz. Not changing the tone much, but improving upon it for spoken word. And the only other thing that I did, because like I said, I don't want you to change the tone of the microphone, I want you to embrace it, I added a slight high shelf to it of 2 dB at 3040 hertz to just open it up a little bit and add a little bit more clarity to it. I will play with and without the high shelf, starting without and then with. And now I will just ramble for a little bit, and we will then go and look at an EQ, which you will see on the screen right now. I'm playing with this in post, and you are seeing what I am doing. I don't know what I am doing in post because I have not done this yet. And if you get right on top of the microphone, get a bit more bass, and then you can play around with that. But I think That is all the EQ that I'm doing. So I will once again play without the EQ at all, and then with the EQ so you can hear the difference that we're adding to the microphone. And now I will just ramble for a little bit, and we will then go and look at an EQ, which you will see on the screen right now. I'm playing with this in post, and you are seeing what I am doing. I don't know what I am doing in post because I have not done this yet. And if you get right on top of the microphone, get a bit more bass, and then you can play around with that. But I think using unconventional microphones for a podcast is amazing. And the second thing that I would add to it is a compressor. And for this example, I just used the stock compressor in Logic Pro, and I loaded up the narration vocal preset. I don't want too much compression on this because I have found once you get overly aggressive with a compressor, it can muddy up a recording, especially with a darker microphone like a Ribbon. So I just want to get maybe -2 dB of gain reduction, maybe -3 at the most. I'll play without and with the compressor. And now I will just ramble for a little bit, and we will then go and look at an EQ, which you will see on the screen right now. I'm playing with this in post, and you are seeing what I am doing. I don't know what I am doing in post because I have not done this yet. Very simple, very straightforward. Again, my main advice is do not run away from the microphone that you're using. Take pride in the fact that you're using the Coles 4038. You have a classic broadcast Ribbon microphone. Embrace it. Let people know that you're using something unique. Goof around about it. Make some jokes about it. When I was using the KU5A, I made plenty of assertions that I was the only person stupid enough and crazy enough to be using a Ribbon microphone for a podcast. A Ribbon microphone that's $1,200. I don't remember what the 4038s are, but I think they're up there as well. Embrace it. Embrace the fact that you're using those microphones. Something that drives me crazy, and I'm going off on a tangent here, is when people buy a microphone and then attempt to make it sound like something else. If you're buying a microphone because you like the sound of it, use that microphone and get the sound out of the microphone that you bought it for. Don't buy an SM7B and think, I don't like the sound of it, I'm going to try to make it sound like a U87. That's silly. If you want that, if you want a U87 sound, save up, get a WA87, save up, get a U87. Save up your money and get the microphone that you actually want. You're not going to get a 7B and make it sound like a U87 or an RE20 or any other microphone. I'm not going to use the U67 and try to make it sound like a U87. I'm not going to get an RE20 and try to make it sound like an SM7B. I'm not going to get a Royer R10 and try to make it sound like a Coles 4038. If I want a Coles 4038 sound, I'm going to try to find a way to get the Coles 4038. If I have the Coles 4038, I'm going to embrace the fact that I have a Coles 4038 and use that sound of the microphone to my advantage. As far as it being pleasing to listen to, Ribbon microphones, in my opinion, are some of the smoothest, most pleasing, and soothing sounding microphones to listen to because they almost completely lack any kind of harshness and sibilance. It makes it incredibly easy to listen for long periods of time. The one downside you do have to Ribbons is they are significantly darker, and if you overly compress them, or if somebody is listening in a very noisy environment, it may be difficult for them to have the intelligibility of speech. So that is why I did add that slight air boost, the treble and air boost on the EQ to add a little bit of that in. And you can get a little bit more aggressive with it if you think that people are going to be listening in poor listening environments. But as a whole, I say embrace it, play around with it, have fun with it, and great set of microphones, man. I cannot wait to get my hands on a 5038. 4038? Why did I forget the model number? Just absolute brain fart right there. I hope that helped. I hope that provided you some context and some ideas. I truly appreciate you sending that in and sharing how it sounds on the pianos and the drums. I thought that was super cool. And if anybody else has microphones that they want to send in to talk about on the show, include some samples like that. I think that is amazing, and it provides additional context. Thank you so much, Stephen. Again, I will link his channel in the episode notes if y'all want to check it out. Let's jump to a voice submission.
Hey Bandrew, it's Matthew. I've been getting into recording some YouTube videos and reviews in my spare time, but I'm having some trouble. I record all of my stuff in a very small room, something most people call a closet, around 6 foot by 7 foot. I have lots of trouble with reverberation and background noise from the busy road outside my window, and I was wondering whether there was anything I could do that could help, either in the room or in post. The room I'm recording in is also my bedroom, so there isn't too much space for lots of sound treatment, aside from maybe a couple of panels. I know that this is never going to be perfect, but I don't think that what I've got at the moment is actually usable. Thanks for your answer and for the amazing show.
Matthew, thank you very much for the voice submission. I appreciate. And I have to say, if you sent in your voice submission using the typical recording method that you use for your YouTube videos, I think you're fine. I didn't hear any significant issues with reverberation or background noise from the street. I don't know if that's what you typically use for your YouTube videos, but if that is, I think you're perfectly sufficient in terms of your recording. A couple of things you could try to do if that isn't what you typically use. If you don't do video for your YouTube videos, if it is just commentary, record in the closet. I used that example in one of my videos. I'll link that in the episode notes if I remember. On 10 tips on how to get better voice sounding recordings. Record in the closet. Also, if you have a bookshelf, stagger the books in it so none of these spines are even with each other. That will act as a makeshift audio diffuser, and that will scatter these sound waves around and make the reverberation much less. If you don't have a rug on your floor and it's not a carpeted room, throw one of those down. Get a big fluffy comforter as well. Maybe you could put some nails in your wall and get some moving blankets that you just hang up while you're recording and put that behind the camera in the direction that you're speaking, which would help with the reverb as well. But in a room that is so small, it's going to be inevitable that you do have some form of reverb because your voice is going to hit that wall very quickly and just start bouncing around like an echo chamber. Chamber. I think that is really going to be inevitable. But if what you sent in is based on or is how you typically record your YouTube videos, I think you're off to the races. I think you're good to go. Just get recording on those YouTube videos and have fun with it. Matthew, thank you very much for the voice submission. I hope that provided some insight. Not 100% sure if that was very helpful at all, but I think that's going to wrap up for this week. I appreciate you all sticking with me this year. As you can tell, I'm wearing my Santa hat. I want to wish all of you a very happy Christmas if you celebrate it, a happy Hanukkah, a happy New Year's if you don't celebrate anything. More power to you. I hope you all have an amazing, amazing day. I was going to say I hope you had an amazing 2020, but I don't think anybody really did. Next week, I'm going to be talking about my favorite things of 2020. I've already done a video on it, but that was more broad. We're talking specifics, media and stuff. Next week, come back next week. I want to hear from you next week. Stick around. Woo! I don't know what's happening. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I appreciate you. I love you. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next Sunday, we'll talk at you. And I know we may disagree on politics. You may think you know my politics. Guess what? You don't. You are way off. And I will talk to you all then. I love you. Bye.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.